experience in my life, in that I have been involved in childcare in one way or another pretty much since I was an infant. I've been working in it since I was about 11. My mom ran a home daycare from the ages of 8 months to 21 years old in my life. It was also how I earned all of my allowance and everything. I put us to work real fast. After that, I have worked in a corporate daycare. I've been a nanny to several families. I am now in New York what I like to call a hustler nanny, where I basically just get a lot of Park Slope moms texting me to be like, hey, so-and-so said you were great. Can you come babysit my kid? I make a pretty decent living doing it. So, that being said, I don't have one 10-minute story that I rack my brain, but I do have quite the medley of silly little kid anecdotes. And so that's what I'm going to do today. To start out, I once used to babysit a little girl who was about 18 months old, and every time we would see each other, she would come up to me and she would put her hands on my shoulders, and then she would turn around very deliberately and then wait like this for a second just to go, oh, hi. It's like, oh, you saw someone do that. Another time watching this little girl, she was taking a nap, and after that I was supposed to go to this fancy toga party, and I had managed to string like a necklace in my hair, like some sort of Grecian updo thing, but I'm not good at those sort of things. So I knew the second that she woke up, she was going to try to rip it right out of my hair, and I was never going to be able to do it again. So she wakes up, she comes right for me, and it's like this, and I was like, I'm thinking on my feet, I was like, oh, no, it's hot, because children are terrified of things that are hot. So she stops, she backs away, like this, and then all of a sudden she looks at me, and so very concernedly puts both her hands right off my head and goes, I was like, oh, you're trying to cool it down. Little kids often don't understand idioms because the language is brand new to them or anything. And I was at my mom's house in daycare, and I was trying to do something, and all these little toddlers were like, kitty, and I was like, oh, God. I was like, guys, hold your horses. And they're like, here's what I heard. So they stop, and they go and sit on the couch, and then all of a sudden I realized it's really quiet. And I was like, hey guys, what's up? And they're just like, Caity, we don't have any horses. I used to get woken up in the morning when I was in high school, sometimes via this little toddler named Mason holding a smoothie that was full to the brim, walking right up to my bed and going, good morning, Caity, your smoothie is ready. And I'd be like, this is how my mom would force me to get up if I didn't want smoothie spilled all over my bedroom floor. I once sat down on the ground at my mom's house, and I was eating a Dunkin' Donuts egg and cheese sandwich when a small baby came up behind me and took a bite out of the back of the sandwich. So yeah, toddlers and puppies are really similar. At my mom's house, the way that to her disciplinary thing was timeout. And one day I went outside to the backyard, and the bottom step of the porch was where the kids had timeout. And I looked down at one of these kids' email. He's sitting in the bottom of the porch, and I was like, hey, what are you doing here? And he was like, I hit Mason, so I'm giving myself a timeout. I was like, oh. I worked at a Bright Horizons corporate daycare for a while. One time a little boy told me that he doesn't like to eat fish. He was like, I don't like to eat fish. I only like to eat regular meat, like hamburgers. And me fully knowing what I was doing here, I was like, oh, so you like to eat cow? And he was like, what? Hamburgers come from cows? I was like, yeah, they do. And he goes, oh, what are they poop them out? Another time at that daycare, we had nap time, and a big rule in the world of preschools and daycares is teachers are not allowed to sleep. There is nap time. It is not for us. So I was sitting on the ground, patting some kids back just to go to sleep, and then one of the kids was like, Caity, how come? Are you gonna take a nap? And I was like, no. And before I could explain that I wasn't allowed to, one of the little girl Skylar goes, huh, well, of course she's not taking a nap. She doesn't have any blankets. And that was how I ended up covered in like 10 blankets and had been given several of little kids like stuffed animals they need to go to bed. I was like, still can't go to sleep, guys, but this is really fucking precious. Other times, though, children are kind of mean and very sassy. In working in that daycare, I floated around all different rooms, and I don't know if you guys know this, but babies' fingernails are the sharpest thing in the world. And I was in the infant room, and I got in the face by this baby Evelyn, and then I had to move over to the preschool room. And the preschoolers, I see immediately, you have a boo-boo? You have a boo-boo? Oh, like, what happened? And I was like, oh, it's okay. Like, I was in the infant room, and Evelyn, she got me, but it's fine. Like, I'm gonna be okay. And the vibe shift was so palpable. They went from being like really concerned to they're like, you got a boo-boo from a baby? Like, if they had the words for it, they definitely were about to be like, oh wow, Miss Caity, we used to respect you. I once worked in a like little kid like art studio. This little boy was there doing, like, he kept talking all day about his imaginary friend Johnny. And he painted something and he was ready to kill him, and I was like, oh, like, you painted Darth Vader. So what did Johnny paint? Like, you know, trying to amuse him. And he goes, he's imaginary. I was like, oh, damn, sorry. I once tried to get out of playing Monopoly Junior with a little girl because I don't really like board games, and I especially don't like Monopoly. So she's like, let's play Monopoly Junior. And I was like, oh, I don't know how. And she just goes, you roll the dice and you move the cars. It's like, oh, she's like, I'm 3 and I get it. She once, also that same little girl once was standing on the edge of her couch and she jumped down, she went, kadoom! Stop. I said kadoom. I said a kaboom. I think that makes it Spanish. Sure, sweetie. I nannied for a family, 2 girls, ages 5 and 8, and the 5-year-old had this very adorable speech impediment. She replaced all her j sounds with D's, her k sounds with T's, and sometimes would just take out the full front of the beginning of a word and replace it with So if something was disgusting, it was dusting. And she got off the bus once, and she was like, Caity, I know I have to do my homework right away, but I told my boyfriend last night I would tell him, and I totally adopt. So before doing homework, I have to tell him. And I was like, okay. And her version of calling him was a old vintage iPod that her parents had given to her as a phone. So then she walks into the other room, and I hear her go. She's like, oh, Jackson, I'm so sorry for to tell you. My dad doesn't want us to be together. And then only if it was supposed to be Jackson, was like, Ella, you tell your dad that I love you, and we will always put boyfriend and girlfriend. And I was like, okay, she got that. She's like, okay, I can do my homework. And then a little while later, I took the girls to Panera, and somehow, like, the subject of Ella's new boyfriend, Dax, or Dax Rockstar, he was like, I was like, oh, like, what happened to Jackson? Or the other one? And she was like, oh, he's done. It's garbage. I was like, oh, okay. She was, but, you know, I have like 100 boyfriends. I was like, oh, you have 100 boyfriends? Like, yeah. I was like, do they all know that you have 99 other boyfriends? She's like, yeah. And I was like, and they're all cool with this? They're all fine with the fact that you have 99? She was like, yeah, Caity, I have needs. I was once babysitting this little boy, Marcel, and the silence is golden, except if you're with a toddler, in which case it becomes very suspicious. And he had run into another room, and I realized it was a little too quiet, a little too long, and then he came back out, and he just goes, the sauce is open. It's like, and he wasn't in the kitchen. I was like, what sauce? What is open? I go away, and he has poured a salsa verde cup all over a white shag carpet. It's like, oh, yeah. Luckily, the parents said it was like from the dollar stores, and he was like, not. And I was like, oh my god. Honestly, you have a white shag carpet and an actual toddler in your house, you're asking for trouble. I have a little cousin who, when he was like 5, I'm from like rural or suburban Massachusetts. We don't really have accents, like, and so my cousin somehow ended up with this like Southie / Long Island thing. Like he'd be like, oh, my dad's gotta go to walk. Like, what? Like all this, who are you talking with? But so he came up to me in the porch one day, and he was like, Caity, how do I spell bored? And I was like, oh, like I'm bored, like Bored. He's like, no, Caity, board. I was like, oh, like a board of wood, Board. He's like, no, Caity, board. And I was like, dude, I'm out of both the ways that I know to spell board. What are you talking about? And he just gets so more frustrated, and finally goes, ugh, Caity, board, like flap your wings, board. It's like, me bird. I will end with this. Because I have been in childcare for so long, and I've known so many people, a lot of the kids I knew when they were toddlers are now like full-blown adults and have their own babies. It's weird. Like, but the best interaction I had with a kid who I hadn't seen since like they were little, or I'd known at least since they were little, this little boy Emil, who I met when he was 6 weeks old, and at the time of this story, he was 7. And he was like, Caity, how long have you known me? And I was like, well, I met when you were 6 weeks old, and now you're 7, so like about 7 years or so. And then he paused, and he did the thing that kids do, where the first question was really just leading to the second question. And he goes, have you ever seen my butt? Like, not recently, that helps. And yeah, that's my medley of little kid anecdotes. Thank you.